The opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, and with me is my brand new expert panel, Christina Mangiola and Jerome Bennett. How are you guys? I'm super excited that we're back. We started the show on time and everything is going well. So, for those who may have missed it, I'd like to once again introduce our brand new panel. Christina, let's start with you. Tell our audience about yourself.
So my name is Christina Mangiola. I'm a semi-recent graduate from McMaster. I graduated about a year and a half ago. And I work at a PR agency in downtown Toronto. I always say it, but not much else to give you. I'm not very interesting.
You are? What do you mean? What do you mean? See, you said that last time, and unfortunately, I didn't catch that. You are very interesting. You are the guest with the most guest appearances on the show.
Yeah. So
you actually, you've been on the show 5 times.
Yes.
And now you're a main panelist. What does that feel like?
It feels good. Ever since when Adam was a panelist and he invited me on for that first time, I loved it ever since, and I love a good debate. So yeah, no, I do. I love this show, and I'm glad that I'm on it full time now.
And I'm so excited to have you because you are incredible. Jerome, let's move on to you. You actually started out as a fan of the show, and now you're on the main panel. What's that like?
It's pretty surreal, to be honest. Like, just to seeing the behind the scenes and everything, and just the tremendous amount of work that you put into this show. Honestly, it's been pretty surreal. Like, I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to add, my little flair and my expertise to the panel.
Well, I am lucky to have you. I'm so happy that you're here because nobody better than somebody who's already passionate about the show, right? And joining us, actually, I should once again remind our viewers, this season we've decided to change things up a bit. Moving forward, our main panel will consist of Christina, Jerome, and myself, and each week we'll have a guest join our panel. This week, joining the panel is Corey Davidson. How are you, Corey?
Hi, I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we are so excited to have you. Why don't you tell our audience a little about yourself?
Okay, so I'm an almost graduate. I've been saying that for a couple months now from Queens. And I've also a big fan of the show before coming on it. I've seen it a lot. A little bit about myself is by day, I'm an exterminator, and by night, I coach public speaking and debate. So I also always love a good debate, and that's a thing I like to spend my free time doing for sure.
That's awesome. And again, we are so excited to have you. Once again, Season 9 of the Raben Report, it's the first time that it's happening outside of Ryerson. So again, this is all new to us, and we're so happy to have you for this discussion. Very interesting, your profession.
Yeah.
Your profession. So coming up in 15 minutes, we'll be talking about our main topic, which is cancel culture. But first, let's take a look at our top stories in our weekly update, starting with debate number 1. Speechless is what is my reaction. It was what was it? Shouting match?
A shit show. It was so many people. My boyfriend put it perfectly. He's like, I can't believe that these are the 2 people going up against each other to be the president of the United States. I found it to be embarrassing for America. I, of course, found Trump more embarrassing than Biden, but I think the whole thing was disorganized and unprofessional.
Jerome.
I I think it was just poorly executed, to be honest. Like watching the highlights, the moderation was poor. I think the scheduling was completely like, it was just poorly done, poorly executed. People should have known what to expect, to be honest, from Trump and Biden. As it comes to performances, I'd call it a tie just because I have no clue. Like there was no exchange of policy or ideas. It was horrible.
Going back to what you said, Christina, the fact that these are the two that America has come up with out of 331 million, what does that say about America?
I have no words for it. I actually don't know how to put my thoughts into words. It just shows you how divisive of a nation the United States are, and how irresponsible. I don't know. It's just it all seems like a huge joke. It makes the U.S. look like a bit of a joke.
Bit of a joke. That's a bit of an understanding.
And a complete joke.
And I do feel bad for a lot of people that do live in the States and just they want to get rid of this. Corey, what's your take on all this?
On the debate in general,
yeah,
I feel like Joe Biden fell a little flat when the whole burden for him was to be coherent, be able to respond sharp. There was definitely some moments, but just before I read anything, any excerpts or news pieces, I felt while I was watching the debate that he didn't seem 100% online, but public reaction seems to be that despite that, Donald Trump kind of made a big enough ass of himself for people to not focus on Joe Biden not being as concise as he needed to be or was expected to be, at least.
It was just, again, speechless. I don't even know what to say. But one of the things that Trump did during the debate was he mocked Joe Biden about wearing a mask. And lo and behold, guess who has coronavirus? Donald Trump. Christina, you're dying over there.
It's like the most. I do not wish ill upon anybody, but I do have to say that it is quite funny, and Saturday Night Live actually put it perfectly. They said, what if karma and science were to somehow, some way come together, work together and make something happen?
I feel like that's offensive to Hindus.
Okay, well, you know what I mean. Not in that way. He's been treating this whole thing like a joke. He's mocking people for wearing masks. He's not taking proper precautions. And look at him now. Now he's got COVID. So,
well, he was just discharged from. We're all disturbed. He was just discharged from the hospital last night, and he was posting saying that I feel great. I nothing to worry about. But the point was made that he got the best health care in the States. Not everybody can get that health care. So did he bring it on himself? Did he? And what's going on in the States with the whole coronavirus, is it his fault? Did he bring this all on himself and his supporters, Corey?
Yeah, I definitely think this guy brought it on himself. I mean, there's a lot of people saying, we should wish the guy well and everything. But as soon as he recovers from COVID, when he comes out of the hospital and says, hey, look, I beat this thing. You guys can too. Just like you said, he beat it with the best health care. And then he's just kind of minimizing the whatever 100,000 dead people right now. It's hard for me to say that he didn't wish this upon himself when he hasn't done a single thing to stop it along the way.
It's a laughingstock. Again, nobody wishes for somebody to get COVID, like you said. But again, brought it on himself. He can't blame anybody else.
He was also sorry, just to cut in.
Yeah.
He was seriously irresponsible because he was apparently showing symptoms and feeling ill before the debate, and he went into it knowing that he had symptoms and knowing that he was feeling a bit off with a worldwide pandemic going on. He still went into it was just the most. He has been so irresponsible, and then to go into a debate while you have symptoms and you're there with somebody else who Joe Biden is also very old. He's high risk the same way that Trump is, and to put that many people at risk is just so irresponsible and disrespectful.
Yeah, I didn't even know that he went in with symptoms.
Yeah.
But we have a comment from Marcia coming in. She says, and Stephen Miller just tested positive as well. His entire inner circle
Pretty much
is getting coronavirus. But let's move forward to our next weekly update topic, which is back home up north. A little sad, though. Former Prime Minister John Turner passed away September 18th, and the state funeral was today. Jerome, I know you really admired him. Why?
I do. John Turner is the last of a dying breed, honestly. John Turner, to put it how Brian Mulroney put it, he's a gentleman, he's a scholar when it comes to politics, and he represents like a final age of political discourse where there was respect, there was courtesy, there was friendship, there was brotherhood. We don't really find that nowadays. There are two notable stories, like John Turner, and up to last year, John Turner and Brian Mulroney were at events together. There was no bad blood between them. I watched that debate. They've debated twice. I've watched both debates so many times, and you can tell the level of respect that they had for each other. You're an awesome person when Pierre Trudeau is beefing with you, and he still invites you to his mass service and the birth of his son. That's some serious respect.
And, one of the ways that he was described both online at his funeral, he was recognized for his personal integrity and commitment to democracy. Can you a little further into that?
John Turner was a true parliamentarian. He loved Parliament. He loved everything about Parliament. Whether you were conservative, whether you were progressive, whether you were the NDP, the Bloc, he had a general level of respect for the House of Commons that we don't see nowadays. I mean, you find people eating, texting. It just doesn't have that same allure. And John Turner was one of the pioneers for that. He was a skilled debater, a skilled orator. I mean, he's a model parliamentarian. And if there's anybody out there now who's maybe 15, 17 and wants somebody to model their career after, John Turner is a pretty good pick.
Wow, those are some strong words. So I didn't know much about John Turner. Do you know a lot about John Turner, Corey Davidson?
Before I Googled him, I wasn't even aware he was a Canadian Prime Minister.
What?
Which I was like, whoa.
One of the shortest ones, though.
Yeah, curveball.
Christina?
I don't know too much about him, but I will say that from all the things that I've seen and heard, he was championed as a great Canadian. He cared about the environment, and like Jerome said, he was very charismatic, and he was a people person. More than what we see now from politicians. So, despite me not knowing everything about him, I do. The feeling that I get is that he was liked by many people on both sides of the political spectrum. So, yeah.
And it was just watching the funeral, watching everybody come in masks. Honestly, seeing the RCMP wearing masks, it looked like The Handmaid's Tale. It really did. They're wearing red and they're wearing masks. And that's a whole other subject, how society is similar to that. But, let's move on to our last update, which is to a leader that is living, thankfully. Annamie Paul has been elected the leader of the Green Party of Canada, the first Black and first Jewish female to lead a federal party. She beat the pro-BDS candidate, and now she's having a lot of issues. Like, the hurdle is not done because the Greens are unhappy that the other parties are not giving the leadership courtesy, which involves allowing the leader to run uncontested in the riding if they don't have a riding. Should they be giving her the opportunity, or is it fair game because that riding was a by-election already? It's the former riding of Bill Morneau, former finance minister who stepped down amid the weed scandal. Should she be running uncontested, Jerome?
Absolutely not. Annamie Paul is she's a great politician, speaks 4 languages, tons of international experience. I had the pleasure of doing an event with her. She's a wonderful lady, her and her team. Shout outs to her if she's watching this. But I do have to say, no, unfortunately not.
But hasn't it happened for other leaders where they ran uncontested?
The circumstances were different.
Such as?
When Jagmeet Singh was running in the by-election and he was giving this so-called parliamentary courtesy, I still considered it undemocratic, but it wasn't a safe seat. It was a seat that could be easily contested. And you have to also weigh in that the Green Party doesn't really have much swing in the House of Commons. Yes, they have 3 sitting MPs, but they don't have official party status.
Fair, but I think that's what she wants to do, is she wants to change the party, reform the party, and make it more mainstream. So don't you think she should be allowed that opportunity?
She's going to have to pull herself up by her bootstraps.
Christina?
Hey man, I think
Because you laughed at that statement, the bootstrap statement.
I just think that I do agree with Jerome for the most part, but I do think that there's always room. Like if there's changes she wants to see and she wants to make, she can do that, and I think she should. But obviously she needs to follow the right protocols and act in a democratic way with it.
So let's assume that she runs contested, right? Because one of the people that's running in that riding for the Liberal seat is Marcy Ian, who's a veteran broadcaster, graduate of my program, RTA. Shout out to you. Hopefully you're watching. So she...
Who is black,
who's a black woman, and she's going to get a lot of support. I feel like she's going to win that seat if she's elected for the Liberal as the Liberal candidate. What do you think Annamie Paul could do if she is elected? Like, how do you think she's going to transform the party? Corey?
I think that like what the Green Party has to offer a lot of people, besides their main focal point being more environmentally conscious, is an alternative to progressive voters who are kind of discontent with the status quo of the Liberals and the NDP. Because while I think that there was a lot of overlap between the NDP and the Green, I do think that like the Green Party like situates itself to try and be more progressive in some regards. Like I know a focal point of their platform in the last election was to try and be anti-colonial and decolonial. And so it's like a little bit of a different approach to progressivism. So if that's what... I guess that's what the Green Party's like trying to do in the future, but perfectly reasonable for the other parties to not want for there to be another party to split the vote. That would obviously be bad for the Liberals and the NDP if there was another alternative.
Fair point. Didn't think about it that way, and that's why you're on the show, to give us a different perspective. But now let's move on to our main topic, which is cancel culture. Referred to as the popular practice of withdrawing support for public figures and companies after they have done or said something considered objectionable or offensive, cancel culture has become a widely popular form of protest. But is it always warranted? Have we gone too far or not far enough? On today's show, we discuss the personal and societal impacts of cancel culture, as well as examine specific examples related to celebrities being canceled. And finally, we dive deep into the very polarizing issue of the renaming of public buildings, streets, and even cities. As a reminder, we are live on Facebook, so make sure to comment on our feed to have your thoughts read live on air. Let's begin with the poll that we asked our audience, which was, have you ever canceled someone? Christina, what are the results?
So the results were that we had 31 people said yes, they have canceled someone before. So that was 10 people. 69% said no, which was 22 people. So 22 people said no, they have never canceled somebody.
Interesting. And we are going to come back to that question in regards to you guys, but let's start right at the beginning. Are you for or against cancel culture? Christina, just yes or no?
No, I'm against it.
Okay. Jerome?
I'm also against cancel culture.
Okay. And Corey?
I'm going to be like a soft yes, because that's a very definitive thing, and I'm sure we'll get to that. As
exactly.
We
and that's exactly why I asked the question.
Yeah.
So have you, back to that question that we just asked our viewers, have you ever canceled somebody? Corey, let's start with you.
I've never canceled somebody. I haven't even really commented like anything like super mean on people who I would consider like shitty public figures. I guess I'm pretty lazy and I'll talk.
Interesting. Well, you're here to tell us why you believe why you are in favor of cancel culture in reference to very specific things that we're going to talk about later in the show. Jerome?
I've never canceled anyone. Like I don't believe we should be canceling people. I think we should cancel ideas. like ideas need to be canceled, not particularly people.
Interesting. And ideas is something that it relates to something Christina wants to talk about during the show. Christina, or have you ever canceled somebody?
So despite the fact that I'm against cancel
my
culture,
God.
I haven't like okay, this is like, for example, Chris Brown. I canceled him. I think that would maybe be more of a moral thing rather than me being like, you know, absolutely nobody should listen to his music. We should forgive him. But that's just an example. I do not stand by Chris Brown. I refuse to listen to his music. I think what he did was awful. And I think there's a bit of a difference there because this is somebody who abused and beat the living shit out of a woman. And I think that's cancelable the same way that rapists are cancelable. And, you know, I feel like there's certain circumstances. I'm not going out there and actively protesting people, but I will voice my opinion when it comes to someone like Chris Brown or Harvey Weinstein or, I can't even think of any names right now, Bill Cosby. Those are all people who I have personally decided to stop paying attention to. I do not think that they should be supported, but that's an individual right to whether or not you want to listen to their music, watch their movies, whatever. That's an individual right. But yeah.
Now that goes into two things I want to talk about, which is number one, was this choice influenced by social media? And number two, can you separate the person's actions from the work they do? So you said no, you canceled his music, but in other cases, like if somebody, for example, disagrees politically with you, can you still appreciate their work? Christina, let's go back to you.
I don't know what my definitive answer is on that, but I think it again, it's a circumstantial thing. I think, for example, so I can't think of a specific scenario or like situation in real life, but I think, let's say someone makes maybe like Kevin Hart having said homophobic things on Twitter.
One
homophobic thing in like 2010 or whenever it was. And then he lost the opportunity to host
the Oscars.
Mm-hmm. That's something where I wouldn't say why, like I would not cancel Kevin Hart over one tweet that he made a long time ago, because I think people can learn and they can grow.
And that goes into the celebrities and politics and the specific examples that we were going to talk about. One of them is Kevin Hart. But let's stick to, just for now, Chris Brown. And again, so you were saying about Chris Brown, you don't appreciate what he did. Obviously, nobody should appreciate what he did, but his canceling his music, so you can't really separate the person from their craft?
I think, like I said, I think it is possible, and I think it all depends on the individual. I think, you know, if you're, I at one point before all of this happened was a huge Chris Brown fan. I was in love with him. I loved his music. I thought he was a great singer. And I also won't ignore the fact that I'm not going to pretend like he isn't very talented, because he, despite being a shitty person, is talented. And I also won't pretend like I haven't heard his songs on the, like, you know, I'm not turning his songs off the second it comes on, but I'm not actively going out and listening to his music or purchasing his music or paying any attention to him. If I come across him, I'm not going to, you know, clean my eyes out with bleach, but
Oh, I would hope that would never be the case.
No.
You know, unlike you know, statements in the States that were saying to drink bleach to get rid of coronavirus. Again, comedical, but people buy it. People buy it. You know, but let's go back to the celebrities, right? You said Kevin Hart, Jerome. You were talking about he tweeted one homophobic tweet and they canceled him. Thoughts?
Well, I don't think Kevin Hart is canceled per se, quote unquote, because he does still have roles. He has a Netflix series. No, it's not Netflix. It's like Quibi. It's a very small,
probably yeah.
I have not watched it, to be honest.
No, nobody's really watching Quibi. It was $1 billion disaster.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think he was canceled though. But the Oscars immediately pulled him from hosting it. It was a really old tweet, and I think yes, everybody agrees that the premise of the joke was wrong. But you have to understand that he is a comedian. He's always making jokes. Like Kevin Hart could not say a word and be funny. Like that's just him. So I think that canceling somebody based on a joke, not even an expressed opinion or an official statement that they made years ago, it ignores the complexity of humanity, the complexity of culture, the complexity of the social spheres and norms that we hold there right this moment, which could change in the next 5 minutes. So I think it denies people their morphology, their ability to change, their ability to evolve, their ability to change their opinions, which we all should be encouraged to do.
Second chances, right?
Yeah.
Corey?
I think that like when you say that cancel culture denies people the ability to improve and learn, that's kind of a mischaracterization of what cancel culture is. Because cancel culture is a buzzword. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's meant to vaguely describe something that prevalently happens. So to me, like virtually nobody's been really canceled. Like at most we've seen like Kevin Spacey after the Billionaires Boys Club, but Louis C.K.'s back in the game.
Roseanne Barr.
Roseanne Barr? Like she
Yeah,
lost the show?
She was canceled
That was the show, right?
completely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hasn't had a gig since.
Okay, well, all from the previous works, I'm going to say 95% of people who like to point up as figureheads are still receiving financial benefits from all of their work. Chris Brown is still asked to feature it on works. Louis C.K. has been offered like new things. So just to be clear about how I perceive cancel culture, and I think a lot of people, is that cancel culture is an attempt to try and shame people and hold them accountable for things that they did. So now we can like go into like each of those scenarios and be like, well, is this that scenario? And yeah.
But, you know, with Kevin Hart, though, for example, the Oscars are really pushing for diversity, right? And when you cancel one of the two black hosts that have been selected in a very long time, doesn't that go against their message? You get Jimmy Kimmel to fill in for the 20th time?
Yeah, but I think that they can say that we don't value in certain cases that diversity as much as having figures that are consistent with like our morals and our standards. Like I don't think anybody would say for the sake of diversity that we should start having people from underrepresented areas that harbor like very harmful views. And you know, people can say, okay, it was just like one homophobic tweet. I don't know exactly the full like relay of the Kevin Hart scenario, but in most of the scenarios with cancel culture, most people are pretty unscathed by these things. And I feel like it's people kind of being fragile, like, oh, the internet got mad at me, but I'm still making all of these monies off of my IP on the art. And it's like, how are you being held accountable if you can still be invited onto other platforms? Like Nicki Minaj still gets Chris Brown to come onto songs. Is he canceled? We can try and cancel someone, but they're still going to be there and relevant.
But sometimes
Yeah.
cancel culture can be misdirected, right? Because, for example, I don't know if you guys remember the story about the aunt that was suing her nephew because of a hug, and everybody was laughing at it, and the story was incorrect. It was she was trying to give him money in some sort of scenario, and the way the media portrayed it was everybody called her the aunt from hell. So sometimes cancel culture is misdirected. Wouldn't you say that canceling Kevin Hart takes away the ability for him to, or the attempt to cancel, as you said, Kevin Hart takes away the ability to allow for a second chance?
Well, it's all about like how you respond to these scenarios. So I remember like one of the prompts was maybe like, have you ever been canceled? And like, to me, that just seems like a weird buzzword for me to say yes or no, I've been canceled or not. But I think people in the past have tried to like hold me accountable for things that I've done that might have not been so great. Now, like, was that like platform like something that was fully public and something high? No. So like, I don't understand why it's mutually exclusive that if somebody calls Kevin Hart out for having a homophobic tweet, that he can't also take that as an example and say, oh, like, okay, I'm sorry, I learned from this, or say something out. A lot of the time, the people who supposedly get canceled don't really do anything of substance to actually reprimand the harms that they did in the first place. So I think it's all what you take out of the experience.
Jerome?
I like what you did there. Loved your definition, but I don't think that's what we're specifically boiling it down to, what I would specifically be referring to is the mob mentality of the Twitter sphere, the internet. So when, and you know, crazily enough, I'm going to take a swing here. I remember reading about the Rwandan genocide. So in the space of 24 hours, the Rwandan government declared that your next door neighbor was now your enemy. And it is your civil duty to execute them on spot, on site. It's the same thing when it comes to cancel culture, in my opinion, when you have this hive mind, this angry beehive that takes it upon themselves to carry a narrative without doing their due diligence, due justice, or even everything is decided in the court of hearsay. Don't you think that is a little bit misdirected, if not dangerous?
Yeah, well, just on that, I think it might be a little bit disingenuous to compare people on Twitter to civilians in like the Rwandan genocide, but I get the internal logic there. And it's why, like, obviously there's going to be problems with any system of like grassroots justice that people agree to. And this is like kind of the trend, I guess, is what grassroots
virtual
people...
vigilante.
Yeah, exactly. But I just generally think that the harms of people misusing cancel culture is probably going to be outweighed by the benefits of having a conception of virtual justice that's more prone to believing victims. Like, it's not like people calling out cancel culture. Most of the people who call out prevalent figures, it's a hard thing to come forward to call these people out. Usually you get slandered on the internet if the thing that's like, even in, say, the person that tried to cancel James Charles, like that person just got completely screwed on the internet because their allegation got misconstrued. So it's not always easy for people to come forward with canceling. And I think that that's what people forget a lot of the time, is that like in the beginning, the people that try and take these people down usually do have a lot of issues, and it comes at a cost.
I'm just going to read some of the comments quickly from our live chat. So I'm actually already going back and forth with somebody. His name is Jacob Silkoff, I believe.
I feel like you know him. Corey?
Yeah.
Hey, Jacob, what's going on?
So I had made, I had said I'm anti-cancel culture, but then went on to say that I canceled, quote unquote, Chris Brown. He was, so we've just been having a bit of a back and forth. I explained that I personally feel there's a difference between cancel culture and holding someone accountable. So, for example, let's look at, what was the swimmer that raped that girl?
Oh, Brock Turner.
Brock Turner. So let's look at Brock Turner. He, this star athlete, whatever, he wasn't held to he wasn't served the proper justice that, he should have been put in jail for a long time, and he was put in jail for 3 months. And so I would say that the difference between, let's say, holding someone accountable for being a rapist, a murderer, or an abuser, and making the decision to stop supporting them or to stop streaming their music or giving them money, I wouldn't call that cancel culture. I would say that's holding someone accountable. And if you disagree with somebody who is an abuser, it is your individual right to stop listening to that person's music if you do not stand by it. If you yourself feel like you're supporting an abuser by paying for their music, for example. And then just another comment, Marshall had said, I feel like I've avoided the content of certain public figures due to their behavior or things they've said, but I've never stopped consuming content from someone I already liked. Which I thought was interesting, because I can agree with that to some extent, but I think like I had said, because I was such a big Chris Brown fan, I backed away from it so quickly after I found out what he did. So I guess I did actively stop listening to him, but that's not to say that, his old music doesn't come on and I still know every single, I know every word. But I have actively just, I'm not, I'm not,
like that's your right though.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between cancel culture and being anti, like holding somebody
like
accountable.
conscientious rights.
Yeah. And I think like if you disagree with what he did and your choice and the way that you want to personally hold him accountable in your own, for your own well-being is to stop listening to his music, then.
Corey?
Yeah. Just to like push back a little bit on there being a difference between cancel culture and holding people accountable. To me, I don't really see a huge difference. Well, there is like some definitional difference, because it's about, to me, consequentially what the people who are attempting to cancel someone are trying to do. So when Nick Cannon said anti-Semitic things and then donated money to Holocaust awareness after, sure, that's probably not going to satisfy everyone, but I'm sure that a lot of people who are raising concerns about Nick Cannon would say, okay, this was some level of accountability for you to reprimand the harm that you did. And I think that the takeaway that people had from that is obviously a better example of how this can be more positive, and how notable figures can turn cancel culture as an opportunity for them to learn and evolve, instead of just turn their heads and be like, oh, left so sensitive, can't say anything anymore.
Well, so you mentioned Nick Cannon and the fact that he donated money, right? So some people may say that giving him that second chance, for him to donate money, it could have been all for show. So I want to direct it at Jerome. What do you do in that case? Because what if that was all for show, and giving him a second chance just continued to allow them to spew whatever hatred they may be spewing?
So, first and foremost, Nick Cannon still has most of his jobs. Most of them. Which is great. I mean, he owns a lot of his content. That's more power to him. His opinion, though, I fundamentally disagree with everything he said in that whole spiel.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to, we have to have free market thought. We have to have free market intellectuality. We have to be able to have the freedom to decide what is bad thought and what is good thought. And good thought should be consumed. Good thought should be praised. Bad thought should be criticized. Bad thought should be... I don't think it should just... You should put an artificial cap on thought, saying, oh no, you expressed this thought before I even give it a try. You need to be canceled. You need to be deleted.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't a free market of thought, because...
There should be.
There should be, but the status quo is that you see that prevalent people who have lots of institutions behind them, lots of resources,
particularly on the left also.
It goes both ways. Like, Justin Trudeau wasn't canceled in brownface 3 times. So it's like, why does that happen? That we know of. Like, I'm sure it happened other times. So like, why does that happen, but other people aren't canceled? And that's kind of why I think cancel culture hasn't gone far enough, because you see, most of the time, the people who in the end of the day do the things that should be canceled for, virtually walk out completely unscathed, besides saying, Twitter was mean to me for a week, and I maybe get a little bit less merchandising.
I think there have been significant issues of cancel culture that have detrimentally impacted some public figures' lives. Like, people get death threats. People's family get death threats. Like, it comes, like, sometimes it's bullying at the end of the day. Like, I know politicians that have been outright bullied, even though they have done questionable things. Like, take for instance, Catherine McKenna. She's now our infrastructure minister. Mm-hmm. She's been caught on camera illegally consuming dog meat, illegally attending a slave wedding, basically, on her trips in Indonesia. Do I think that you should go to her constituency office and paint derogatory terms on her windows or harass her outside? No, I don't think so.
You don't think a politician that was like complicit, or not complicit, but it was just like there at a slave wedding, that there shouldn't be like some pretty serious repercussions for that? That's pretty
I don't
bad.
think you fight hate with hate. Like, I'm a firm believer in love thy neighbor. Like, if you really want that person to be held accountable as a politician, vote her out. So if you want their views to be held accountable, you approach them in love and in forgiveness.
But I think to say that you should love thy neighbor and approach these people...
Love thy enemy.
Yeah, love thy enemy. The people that have done these bad things comes from a position of privilege. For you to be able to say, oh, these things that you did are just independent thoughts that don't actually affect my life. Like, okay, it's cool if like an individual person can say, well, her being at that slave wedding doesn't personally affect me that much. But for some people, that might be like really fucked up if you... I'm sorry, can I say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Because like, you might have come from like a war-torn country and had like horrible experiences.
Definitely.
Maybe, yeah. So like...
But does that give you the right to break the law?
It doesn't give you the right to break the law, but you should be able to cancel a politician who was complicit in like a slave wedding
at the vote. But it should not move you to the fact where you're fighting fire with fire, and then leaving the whole place burnt down.
Why is it fire versus fire? They went to a slave wedding, and I want them to not be a politician.
But I'm talking about the instances where people and these are people on the right, people have literally gone outside her office, harassed her and her family at the movies, painted derogatory terms on her campaign office. This mob mentality of, well, I need this person to be held accountable, and I don't feel like they're being held accountable by the mainstream media or by the authorities or by the parliament or by the government. So I have to take things into my own hands, and I have to get the pitchforks and the torches and go raise hell.
Well, like sometimes these views that people have are like physically damaging to people. J.K. Rowling in her new book wrote about a murder, as we'll get to. Oh, is that too early? There's like reference that book? Okay, I saw.
No, keep going.
Yeah.
She like in her new book wrote that like there's a person who like dresses up as women and goes around and like killing people. How could a transgender person say, well, that's just like an individual? Like her belief in her book that she wrote out there is actively harming the humanity of people out there. Some people don't have the privilege to separate these thoughts from their livelihood.
Just to add to that, actually, so I told you guys this previously. One of my, and surprisingly, because I'm a lefty, one of my favorite YouTubers of all time is Blair White. She's a trans YouTuber, and she actually spoke about the J.K. Rowling book, and she said, you know, I read this book through and through. They don't necessarily, there's no direct attack on trans people, and apparently this individual in the book is never referred to as a transgender person.
I think
they're referred to
as
a cross-dresser, and the fact that they're cross-dressing doesn't actually apparently have anything to do with this person in the book is never explicitly called a trans person. So I do understand, I completely agree with you that there are problems with that. Like you can't, you know, this especially right now, this is such a sensitive topic, and we have to be mindful of people's feelings and their life experiences. But I will also say that we really have to, when it comes to these things, we really have to look into it. And there's a level of sensitivity with this J.K. Rowling stuff that's like, what she's doing may be inherently harmful, but she never explicitly said
that this person
is trans and this person is a murderer because they're trans and this person is struggling because they're trans.
I just got to huff in there because it's like the people who are like really transphobic, a lot of them don't even recognize transgender people, so they wouldn't refer to that person as a transgender person. But it's like when you accumulate J.K. Rowling's other comments with trans women diminish the value of actual women,
100%.
And then it's like, that's already a transphobic trope that they're like mentally ill people that want to kill and assault people. So then when she just says, oh, it's a cross-dress, that's like such a thin line for like what they're trying to do.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think you're totally right, and I see the harm in it. The only point that I'm making is that we do, when it comes to these things, we do need to tread lightly and make sure that we're not acute necessarily, you know. And I think J.K. Rowling has demonstrated that she's clear. I don't agree with the things that she's saying, and I don't agree with making this character in the book a cross-dresser who's a murderer and who's psychotic, because that's not what trans people are. But I think this is a character. I don't know, but I do, Corey, I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah. I'm just kind of throwing in that like there is a little. We have to be careful to not make accusations. Like we can't definitively say like this character was trans and she hates trans people.
But are people becoming too sensitive? That's the angle that I wanna look at it, because if the other side of the argument is if you're gonna let a book affect your entire perception of everything, then is the book the problem, Corey?
Yeah, the book is a problem, like without a doubt. I consider like.
Have you read Huckleberry Finn?
I haven't read Huckleberry Finn.
I have.
I'd like to think I'm principally consistent.
I don't see myself through. I don't see myself through the lens of N-word Jim, and I'm a black person, so I do think interpretation does have a pretty because if you, and this is something we're so polarized now, if you view yourself through the lens of your political belief always, you often get offended.
But if you're accusing trans people of being murderers, like the point is that
not
some of the
all
things,
trans people believe that that's what J.K. Rowling is.
And that was
be offended.
Definitely you by all means.
But just because you're offended, does that mean the whole thing has to change?
it depends. Some offense, it's like a spectrum. And once you get far enough down the spectrum, it's not just their feelings that they're hurting, but you're making those people feel unsafe.
Yeah, and I think the point that I was also making, just to the fact that Blair White was talking about this, and I'm not saying that she's a voice for all trans women or trans people in general. I'm just kind of, I think that it does give us a different perspective as,
Of course.
you know, like we don't know what the experience is to be trans. At least I don't think so. And to make that decision for them and to tell them that this is how they feel and they should be upset.
I agree.
I think like that's their jurisdiction. That's not for us to touch. And the only reason I bring Blair White into it is because she is a trans woman who can kind of add a different opinion that we haven't necessarily seen from that community.
Now, we are running out of time, so I want to move on to the most polarizing part of the discussion, which is the renaming of public buildings, streets, or cities. So for people who don't know, I made a post that Vaughan Secondary School, my old high school, is being renamed. They don't have a name yet. They just removed Vaughan. This goes into, and the argument that I received. Actually, let me start with Corey, because Corey was the only person that on that post was not rude to me.
That's so sweet.
You disagreed with me, but you weren't an ass about it. And the fact that I have to say that, the fact that the norm is being an ass when you don't disagree, when you disagree with somebody, is very troubling. So I appreciate the fact that you were able to comment on the post and give a different perspective without calling me a racist or a bad person or everything. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, should we be renaming institutions such as Vaughan Secondary School, which is named after the city, which is named after Benjamin Vaughan, who was a slave owner? Jerome? Should we be renaming these places?
I think it should ultimately depend on the members of the municipality of Vaughan. They should take into consideration that it would cost millions of dollars, which inherently millions of dollars in municipal spending always leads to increases in land tax and other taxes, municipal fees, parking fees, which would discriminate against lower income households who they're aiming by this virtue signal to protect.
But let's start with the school, because the school is being renamed. That's a fact. And it's going to cost about $90,000. And the argument that was made was that this is going to support black students and black youth and empower them.
Did they ask for that?
I think that this is like from black activists across North America to rename places, that this is like, granted, a lot of grassroots activism, so we can't point and be like them, but this is a common thing that's being voiced by the progressives of today. Today.
So let's say we do rename the school and we rename it after some person who is noble today but found infamous tomorrow.
Rename it again. Easy. It only costs $90,000 of a $31.6 billion budget. Just so we're clear about the relativity.
But isn't it erasing history? Because, for example, at Ryerson, they want to rename Ryerson as well. So they keep trying to take down the statue, and instead, what Ryerson did is they put a plaque to say what Ryerson to contextualize what Ryerson did and his past. What's the word? Transgressions, and that was the solution, but that's still not far enough for people.
Well, I'm really happy that you said contextualize, because that's really my idea for a lot of this. And to me, this is principally consistent with a lot of things, like what we would do with Mount Rushmore, what we would do with Holocaust death camps in a lot of ways. And it's in the history, when we have these places for people who have done bad things, it's important to understand that just having these places has a normative influence on places. When we have places named after slave owners, colonial leaders, it makes us look back on history as Canada was discovered versus Canada was conquered. And I think that that's with the trends to decolonize academia and make academia less racist, that this is a very important part and just one variable of the fraction. So you can put Benjamin Vaughan in a museum where we can contextualize his historical importance, but also highlight the bad things that he did. Versus when you just have a school named off of him, you don't get that context, but rather you get random blind idolization and romanticism of him. All these people I know that went to Vaughan Secondary, they don't think Vaughan was a slave owner, they think of Vaughan as the school where they had all of these good memories. So
Yeah.
this is like actually physically the whitewashing of history and how we like just start to normalize colonial violence.
Jerome.
Wow. I don't see it that way, to be honest. Could I ask you a question, Corey?
Yeah, of course. That's why I'm here.
Do you have grandparents?
I do have grandparents, and they did some sketchy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still have photos of your grandparents
I
around
do.
the house?
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel good. They're still alive, 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
think,
great.
I think Jerome's point is you still have those photos of your.
Even though they might have done negative things, you still
Yeah.
appreciate the foundation that they gave your parents, which gave you a foundation, don't you?
I don't fully appreciate that foundation.
But you still
Yeah.
keep pictures of them.
Yeah, I still keep pictures. And
Why?
we can put them in a museum. Why can't Benjamin Vaughan be in a museum?
Why
where we
can't
have-
Benjamin Vaughan have a plaque contextualizing the good and the bad things he did in the school named after him?
Because just saying that there's a plaque and that that's contextualization isn't qualitative. It's not just like we have contextualization and that's enough. It's qualitatively, what does that contextualization look like? And how does it like help us look back at history in a more accurate way?
In a more accurate... So, all right.
Yeah.
First, I completely agree with you. Let's start where we agree. I completely agree with you that we do have to decolonize aspects of history and tell history from the 2 points. There are still First Nations peoples who have an alternate view of history, and their voice deserves to be heard by all means. I think we should bring them into this conversation, into the school, instead of renaming the school.
But this is like one of the things that I'm certain is in line with like native activism is to like stop idolizing and naming places after the people that conquered, not discovered their land.
But how far does it go?
How-
If you
Yeah.
start renaming one thing after another,
Where do
how
we
far
end?
does it go? Because
think-
you start just before you go,
Yeah.
you start with Vaughan Secondary School, then you go to the city of Vaughan, then you do Ryerson, then you do Dundas Street. First of all, like Jerome was saying, this does cost a lot of money. And the question is, does the majority of people want this, or is it a small minority?
I think that this is, as people, because it's a new trend, obviously, in the past like 10, 15 years in academia, like anti-colonialism, anti-racism. And I think that as people are becoming more aware of this issue, you're seeing a larger outcry from progressives for this. And just in terms of like the money that it costs, considering that like the Canadian government only gave Indigenous people $20,000 after they were like raped and genocided in Indigenous native schools, I think it could be viewed as like fair reparations. How much does it cost to change all of the street signs?
But wouldn't you say
Yeah.
that it's better to then give them more money rather than spend the money on the renaming of institutions?
I think it's not mutually exclusive because we can have education reforms in the school that improve the school while also renaming it. It only costs $90,000 of a $31.6 billion budget. So like, I don't understand why we can't do both, because we can definitely have more black teachers. We can make the education less classist, more inclusive, without also not naming a school. Like $90,000 is nothing for the provincial government. Pennies.
Christina?
The one thing I was just going to throw in is I think one thing that we can do as a society and what our government can do moving forward is that we actively stop naming things like that could be another solution to this issue, right? Like,
definitely.
let's say you're opening new schools, you're opening new programs, whatever it might be, and we actively as a society stop naming places after individuals who have a history of
But that's the thing. There's such a morphology to it.
I know, and it's hard because I think though we're in a position now where there's so many
Now.
yeah. So Canadian icons who are still living, who are having places named after themselves, who aren't problematic. Let's say Chris Hadfield, for example. I'm pretty sure there's a school now named after him.
Yep.
And I could be wrong, but as far as I know, he's not a problematic man. He's
Yet.
not yet. He will maybe be after he's passed.
Yeah.
We'll have something to say about him. But I think that's an example of somebody who lives now. It's recent history. He's had a school named after him. And as far as I can tell, individuals like that, that's a good start. We start naming places after people who are less problematic. It's going to be hard to erase every single street name, school name in existence that has some kind of negative history behind it. But I think what we can do moving forward is we stop doing that.
And we actually work towards tangible change for these communities.
Yeah, rather than, it's just, I think it's, maybe I'm wrong, but I do feel like it could be slightly unrealistic to say we're going to have to rename every single street in Toronto.
If not Canada.
Canada, every school, every hospital, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a lot of work. But one thing we can do right now in this moment is when we're rebuilding schools, when we're rebuilding infrastructure, we just stop naming it after these people who carry so much baggage and negativity and histories of racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, whatever it might be. We just stop.
Corey?
Just on like the quick remark of intangible change. Because I just don't fully get why. Like, it would be virtue signaling if this was all they were doing. Like, if the Liberal government did their typical PC virtue signaling, very nothingness, and came up and said, we're just going to rename these places. We've solved racism. It's over. That would be explicitly virtue signaling. Yeah, Justin Trudeau, like, right up his alley. Loves to lie to us. But, like, and that's not the only thing that they're doing, because there's pressure on the left, both the NDP and the Liberal government, to, like, have other educational reforms right now. And this isn't the only thing that they're doing for education reform. It's like one variable of it.
But is it a necessary variable?
When you have people from those communities that are saying, this is something that's of importance to me, then I think that that's something that is of importance.
But it's not the entire community.
No. But nobody ever agrees on everything 80, 90%. People consider 60% a landslide, so 65%.
Jerome?
I don't even know where to respond to that. I still think that most Indigenous people, at least who I've consulted and who I've talked to, would much rather, who are tired of virtue signal, who are tired of intangible change, who are tired of just statues and art pieces and names and songs, but actually want tangible change. They want money for their communities. They want to end boil water advisories. They want equal representation. They want so much more than just naming stuff. I feel like it rings hollow to those communities.
So we do have a comment coming in from Rebecca, and she says, such an excuse to say that's a lot of work. It must have been a lot of hard work to kill hundreds of Indigenous peoples, but that happened. Jerome?
I think that might have been a response to what I said. I'm pretty sure I said that it would be a lot of work to, rename everything. Mm-hmm. And of course, I don't mean that work can't happen. I don't, things can all I mean by that is that it's going to take time and patience to get to where we want to be. We can't expect things to turn over overnight. And it's the genocide of Indigenous people in Canada. We have, it's such a hidden, you think about all the genocides in the world. Canada has one of the worst histories when it comes to the mistreatment and the genocide of Indigenous people. Residential schools. The last one closed like 24 years ago. That's as old as us. That's to me. That's just that is so recent. So it's not to say that these feelings that people have and this is that it's unjustified. All I'm saying is we need to, as a society, work together. We need to be patient. We need to be understanding. And the more we argue with one another about things like it's just we're going to keep delaying the progress that we're trying to make.
And in terms of delaying the progress we're trying to make, this brings us to my final question, which is, what is the future of cancel culture? Will more be canceled? So, for example, Vaughan Secondary School was renamed. Will the city of Vaughan be renamed? Will Ryerson be renamed?
Will we remove the statue of Karl Marx?
Or will there be backlash? Corey?
I just think in general, with like how much social media has influenced politics, and we've seen the rise of like grassroots activism, that's probably more likely that grassroots activism gets even more successful, more organized, and is probably able to achieve more. So yeah, it'll probably achieve more of its goals and quote unquote cancel people.
Jerome?
We're all going to be canceled. Tomorrow. If not tomorrow.
I'm waiting for my day for someone to dig something up that I put on the internet when I was 11 years old. Like, yeah, I know. That's the world we live in now.
But the thing is, and it brings us back to the idea of cultural hegemonies, it's always changing. And the sad thing is that it still feels like we're being told what to be outraged about. And a lot of the outrage, I question how genuine it is, because at the end of the day, it still seems that there's a certain person of a certain political ideology that is more susceptible to cancel culture than another person of a specific ideology. I'm not going to name names, but I think that's my view, and we just have to learn how to counter that.
Yeah, I think I honestly don't know what to expect because, you know, you're right. Like you're both right in the sense that, you know, who's to say that we won't be canceled in the future? And your point, Corey, is that, you know, if it's helping people to if it's reparations, if it's helping people, then maybe that is the right way. But who knows? Once again, this is a discussion for everybody to be a part of, and we're going to say that was our show for this week. Thank you to everybody that tuned in and commented. We got a lot of did we get a lot of comments, Christina?
We got a lot of comments. A lot of it is, as usual, me beefing people in the comments, which we love to see it. Keep them coming. And I think people, there was one comment like, in what world are you a lefty? And I mean, I think more episodes to come, that'll be more evident.
Because God forbid you disagree with the hive mind.
I know.
I swear.
Oh, well, what can you do?
Take it away, Elliot.
We love when you beef in the comments, though.
I know.
Because it
love
adds...
it.
Like a referee shirt the next time. Can we do that?
Maybe. I mean, we can. But, you know, once again, thank you to everybody that tuned in to our season 9, episode number 2. And thank you to Corey. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion.
Yes,
Thank you
Corey.
so much for having me. I hope to debate you guys again someday.
You were
Of
great.
course,
Very well
you are,
spoken.
honestly.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Very well spoken. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate the fact that you are someone who can come and have a debate without name calling or without accusing people of something, because that's what we need more of, and that's what this entire room is made up of, people like that. And so once again, I am very honored to have these people with me in the room. So that was our show for this week. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. Once again, a brand new episode of the Raben Report will be coming to you next week, same day, same time, almost same people. Have a great day, everyone.
Cheers.